Hello, everyone, and welcome to Acting Sessions. I am your host, Marco DiGeorge. I am the co founder and instructor at Truthful Acting Studios. We're an acting conservatory located in Orlando, Florida. And today, we go through various topics during these sessions. And we've been talking about the structure of acting in our previous sessions, the six pillars of acting, kind of how it all comes together. But today I wanted to address something a little more difficult, which is going to be the emotions in acting. And we'll get to that. Just as a reminder, in case you're new to one of the sessions, you can chat with us live right in the chat box in today's session. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to interact with us. Our administrator, Samantha DiGeorge, will be interacting with you there. And if you have any additional questions to what I'm going through, I will do my best to answer all of them in the time that we have. But let's go ahead and jump right in. And really, what we want to talk about is this thing called emotions in acting, because it's as an actor, as we start down this process, this is one of the biggest concerns that new actors have is like, okay, well, I understand that I'm going to have to memorize a script, and I understand, that I'm going to have to learn some of the technicality of acting. But what about this thing called emotion? When I see an actor emotional on the screen or on a stage, how are they doing that? Like what gives them the fuel to do that? And the first thing that they ask me is, well, is it real or is it fake? Is it just a trick? Do you learn how to cry on demand? Do you learn how to do that? Do you pretend to be feeling these things, or is it somehow real? And the short answer to that, which we'll be discussing deeper in the session, is that it's very real. But when I mean real, I don't. The term realism is usually we equate realism to how we might normally do things in our daily lives. So instead of real, I like to say our emotions are truthful and they are authentic. So in that realm, yes, they are authentic and truthful in that moment, meaning what we feel as an actor in that moment is authentic to us. We are really feeling these things. We are really then expressing true emotion in the moment. And when you watch the great actors do what they do, that's what they're going through. So it's not that we're faking it. Now, the industry is very wide as far as all the different realms of acting that exist. And sure, there are aspects of the industry uh, that have fake elements to it. And what I mean by that is yes, there are drops in the eyes, or there's something called a tear stick, which is something you put right here under your eye, and it causes your eye to water up. There are those kind of things that we can do as well, but those are the exception to the rule, and those are used on productions, typically film sets. Those are used when the actor, for whatever reason, just can't bring the authentic emotion. Either they're untrained to do so, or every now and then, even your well-trained actors, you're just exhausted. You just don't have what you need to get to where the shot is requiring. And so they have these elements. But most of the time, for all of your uh, for all of your main actors and all of the emotional roles and everything we're doing, we're trained in a way to bring authentic emotion, meaning we feel what we feel in those moments, which is what makes it effective to the audience. The audience is going to feel out of a performance the authenticity and truth that the actors are conveying. Meaning, if I'm watching a performance and an actor is showing me that they're emotional, right? That they're trying to perform it and fake the emotion. Even if they do a relatively decent job in that aspect, in the performance of it, I, as the audience member, I'm not going to feel it because there's an energy that is conveyed, whether live in person or even on film. There's an energy that's conveyed with authentic emotion. And when an actor has authentic, truthful emotion in that moment and it's captured on film, the audience will feel it as well. All right, not only see it, but they will feel it. So if you're ever watching a performance and you're seeing like an actor cry and you're just like, I just don't feel anything. I'm not feeling it out of the actor. Well, it may be that they weren't being authentic in that moment. So I'm talking about truthful emotion and being authentic, but it brings up something else that's very important in all of this is something we call emotional safety. Because of course, if I'm telling you, yes, you must be truthful in your emotion, you're like, okay, well, how do I do that? And one of the common ways that untrained actors will think, and even untrained directors will think, is that, oh, in order to bring out something emotional, an emotion inside of me, I need to think of something in my life that has been emotional. And this breaks the realm of emotional safety, but it's actually very common in the beginning aspects of acting, and you need to be very careful of this. So, for example, you will see, and you might even have thought about this yourself. It's like, well, in order to get the feeling of sadness or loss, I need to think about the time when I actually lost a family member in my actual life. And while, yes, you could think about something traumatic in your life, you can absolutely do that, and it will create emotion. But the problem with that is that it's real in your life. Meaning, if you suffered a trauma in your life, like a loss of a loved one, and you think about it again now, will it make you sad? Yes. But you're connected in with that. It's happening in your actual life, or it has happened in your actual life. And the biggest thing is there's no disconnection from it. As an actor, we need to be able to step in to the life, but also step out of the life. We don't ever want to step into an emotional moment as an actor where we get consumed in it, where we cannot break away. It's critical as an actor that we can both step in fully, go wherever we need to go, but when the director says cut or we walk off the stage, we can let go of it completely. Just we call it triggering out of that emotion. And we can't do that if we're working from real events. So the biggest tip that we have is we do not work from actual events in our life, either past or present. And I know it can be relatable. I know that, I've heard from actors that it's like, yeah, but the part I'm playing, I've been through a similar trauma in my life. Why can't I just reflect on that? And it's because it's dangerous. It's emotionally dangerous for you. And when it becomes emotionally dangerous for you, it becomes emotionally dangerous for everyone around you. Safety in emotion and safety in our acting is critical. We must maintain that. And what I mean is dangerous, and this goes all the way back to turn of the century 1900s when Konstantin Stanislavski, one of our founding grandfathers of acting, was initially playing with this type of thing. It's called emotional recall. He was initially playing with this, and the concept that, okay, in order to get an authentic emotion, let's go back in our lives or even use something currently going on in our lives that is emotional, and let's just grab that emotion and use it. Now, the psychology behind emotional recall works from a psychological standpoint. It states that if you go and visualize something from your past, an emotional event from your past, you can tap into the feelings of that emotion again, and those emotions will come to the present. Like you'll feel them again right now. From a psychology standpoint, that works. When a psychologist is using this methodology as therapy, it can work. But you're in the hands of somebody that is guiding you to eventually healing through something. But as an actor or as a director using these methodologies, you're now bringing raw emotion from an actual traumatic event from your past, you're bringing it to the present, yes, and it will be there, but you have no way to sort through it. You have no way to disconnect and let go of it. And so it can be damaging, meaning it can cause depression and it can cause emotional breakdowns. It can cause things, it can cause stress, undue stress on the actor. And so we want to make sure we avoid that. In addition, it can cause the actor to physically have an outburst that we don't want. Because as an actor, we must always be physically and mentally in control. Physically and mentally in control, meaning I'm on a set and there's cameras and lights and people and crew all around me. I need to make sure that I don't do anything that damages anything around me. If I'm on a stage, stages are, a stage has a set that is built, but they're built very light. They're built to move in and out very quickly. I can't slam a door too hard on a set or a stage or I'm going to break the door. I need to be careful with my physicality with other actors or I could harm them. And I need to be careful with myself and my own physicality or I can harm myself. So when we learn to use emotion safely, we can maintain physical and mental control. But if we go back and we learn and we work in this unsafe way, it causes outbursts of these moments where we are out of control physically and mentally, and that it can bring harm to ourselves or others. So we're very, very careful not to do that. Okay, so then it's like, okay, well, if I can't use anything from my past or present, you're saying I can't use actual events, then what do I have left to use? Well, we have this wonderful thing called our imagination. And Stanislavski, back all those years ago, he tried this and realized it didn't work as actors were having mental breakdowns. So then he re-evaluated and came up with something else called the as if. And the as if is simple. Well, this is happening in this moment in the script, so it would be as if this is happening in my life. And the way we do that is we use our imagination, basing it in personal meaning in our actual life. We want it to be personal to us, but it's out of the imagination. So instead of going back into actual things that have occurred in our life, we say what could occur, what event might or not will, but what could happen in our lives that would create a similar feeling. And that's it. And that's it, right? So it's very simple. It's as if this is happening for me. So let's say the character has suffered a great loss. And this is the moment in the film where, we're realizing that loss and the camera's on us and we're going through the character is going through a process of that loss. It's okay. So as the actor, we have to access that feeling of loss without going to the past, without staying, without using anything that's currently happening in our lives. What we do is we say, okay, well, this would be as if I lost somebody in my life. Somebody that's alive and well and they're doing fine, but I can take on this imaginary circumstance and start thinking of, well, what is this like? What would it feel like to lose this person in my life? And we can relate to it that way. And that's how we step in. Now, the beauty of using imagination is that once we are done acting the scene, once we walk off stage, we can disconnect from it. We remind ourselves that what we just experienced was imaginary, that everyone is still doing well, right? Whoever we imagined in our lives that we lost, they're still in our lives. It's okay. Nothing bad has actually happened, and it allows us to disconnect. An analogy I like to use in this whole process, especially of as ifs, is we already know how to do this. It's called we call it actor's faith, but it's also called the suspension of disbelief. We know how to suspend disbelief. And my proof for this is that if you've ever watched a movie, watched a play, watched a television show, if you've ever watched something and you are taken into the story, meaning that you've gone along with the ride and you're feeling something that a character feels. Something happens to a character on the screen, and you feel something for that character. Well, we call that the suspension of disbelief. You let go of the fact that you're sitting in a movie theater or you're sitting at home or you're watching a play. You let go of that fact and you allow yourself to go on this journey. So we know how to do this. And once the movie is done or the television show is done or everything, we can disconnect from that and we know that what we just experienced was a television show or a movie or a play. We know that it was imaginary. Well, the same concept we now do as actors in life. Instead of watching it as an audience, we do the same thing on stage or on set. We allow ourselves to dive into the imaginary circumstance, right? Into this uh, life. We suspend our disbelief of what's happening to accept the circumstance. And then we allow ourselves to go on that journey. And when it's done, we disconnect because what we just experienced was imaginary. So that's what we do in a nutshell. Now, of course, this is the very basics of it. And of course, I'm telling you all of this, but then how do we do this? Well, we step into emotions through immersive and immersive training. We must train as actors over and over and over a very long period of time. It's really the only way to accomplish this because in life, as human beings, we are very good at hiding our emotions. It's just in your life, you might have run into times when you feel something, but then you choose not to express it, right? You don't want someone else seeing you emotional, or you don't want this group of people seeing you emotional. We don't want the emotion to reflect badly on us, whatever that may be. But that's society and that's culture and that's realism, which is what we're not after. So, as an actor, we need to train on how to be truthful in the moment. Truthful means that whatever we feel, we allow ourselves to fully feel it and then also fully express it. That's what truthful acting means, right? We allow ourselves to take the impact of something, give ourselves permission to fully feel it, and then give ourselves permission to express it. And we're going to be expressing this emotion in front of others. In a theater, we're in front of an audience. On a set, we have an entire crew around us watching us. There's a camera pointing at us and lights lighting us up. I mean, we have all of this stuff. So it's very difficult to do. It's difficult to learn how to do this. Our self consciousness is heightened, meaning the fear of that vulnerability is heightened, and we're very aware of what's happening within ourselves. And so our training is about learning how to lessen this self consciousness, learning how we can allow ourselves to step in to the vulnerability. And through a series of exercises, step by step by step, we go through these things. We go through and actors have to little by little give themselves more and more permission to allow this emotion to one, take effect, and then two, to express. So that's how we deal with emotion. It's very authentic. It's very truthful. We as actors, we really feel these things. Every part I've ever played. I mean, yeah, the emotion is real. The biggest thing is we learn though, because I mean, I went through the same thing myself. When I was learning the acting process, I was resistant to some of the emotion that went into it. I was performing the emotion versus authentically feeling it, because authentically feeling it is vulnerable. There's a vulnerability to emotion. Now, vulnerable means open to attack, right? So when we feel vulnerable, we feel emotionally vulnerable, it means we feel that we are open in some way and that we can be harmed. So what we tend to do whenever we feel vulnerable is we close off, right? We close ourselves off in order to protect ourselves. Well, now as an actor, we need to learn how to stay open, step into the realm of vulnerability and stay there. And we do that over time. Emotions is one of the what I call the big three in the pillars of acting. There's 6 major pillars of acting. Emotions is one of the core pillars. We have mental analytical as one, we have psychological as another, and emotions is the third, meaning that these 3 are the foundation of solid acting, of effective acting. And so as an actor, if you're trying to get into acting or if you're already in acting, your ability to accept your emotional response, your ability to let in the emotions and then express them is something that needs to be worked on. The good news is, as a human being, you have the full ability to feel emotion. The full ability, meaning that we're born this way. So this is one of these things that's like it's already in us. We've just learned over over time. We've learned how to hide the emotion. That's really what we do. We've learned how to hide it. We've learned it through school. We've learned it in our family. We've learned it through friends. We've learned how to be very safe and protective over how we're feeling. So now we just need to unlearn that. But the great news is that it's already inside of you. As a human being, you have the instinct of emotion. You are fully feeling in every moment, even if you're aware of it or not. And now we just have to give ourselves permission to express it and express it fully. So when I mentioned that I had this topic of emotion that I was going to do next, I had the amount of questions that came in was a great response. So I want to get into the questions right away because that will help further the discussion of what we're talking about, and plus it will help answer some of your questions that you've submitted. So to start us off, the first question is, how can I show emotion without feeling like I'm trying to show emotion? So this goes into what I'm saying about we authentically feel what we feel. When we're trying to show emotion, when we feel ourselves forcing it in any way, it's inauthentic. When you feel emotion authentically in your life, so remember a time maybe in your life that something affected you. And if you think back to when you're really affected by something, you're not trying to show it. If anything, you're trying not to show it. But we're not trying to feel it or trying to show like I'm emotional. No, we're not. And so really in our acting, it's the same thing. Once we learn how to properly step into the imaginary circumstance, and once we learn how to really take that on as if it's happening, we call this actor's faith. Our actor's faith gives us permission to accept our imaginary circumstances as if they are true and then live them out truthfully, meaning feel the effect of the emotion and allow it to express truthfully in that moment. The actor's faith allows us to do that, but it needs to be cultivated and learned over time. And faith, just like any faith that you might have, spiritual faith, religious faith, any sort of faith that you might have in your life, faith is a belief in the unseen. So our actor's faith is the same way. We have to believe in ourselves. We have to trust ourselves. We have to know that what we have to offer is okay and enough. And it will be what is needed. It's not that it might be what is needed. If we allow our authentic truth to come out, it will be what is needed. And that's an amazing thing. It's part of I think what I love about this work, the acting work, and especially a process like what I teach, the organic side, the Meisner approach, is that it not only teaches you how to be a very effective, very strong actor, it also teaches you how to be a more confident and more fully aware human being. You'll feel good about yourself because we build the confidence in ourselves. And you start believing we have a mantra that I am enough. We say in our studios, I am enough, right? Whatever I have to offer, that is enough. And it's great, and that's what the world needs. Who you truly are is magnificent and totally unique. And that's an amazing thing to feel. So this work, and especially the emotional work, allows us to feel there. It allows us to go there and feel that, because every time in your life that you have an emotional response to something and you hide that feeling or hide that emotion, what you're telling yourself is what I'm feeling right now is not good enough. What I feel right now in this moment, in this situation, is not valid. And so it cultivates the self-belief that we are not enough. And rather, what I like to see, what I want to see in all my actors, and really just as human beings, is the belief that no, I am enough. What I feel is valid and is okay, because they're my feelings. Just like they're your feelings. Whatever you feel is okay. And so that's what we really work on as well. And that goes into the psychological pillar, right? We work with the psychological pillar and the mental pillar as we're working on emotion. They kind of all come together. So, so again, when you get to the point where you fully can take on the imaginary circumstance, you will authentically allow emotion to express, and it will feel very authentic in that moment. It won't be like you're trying to show it. And that's the goal. So the next question is, what is the best way to improve crying on cue? So as we've just discussed, right, we're not going to fake it. However, there are moments where it's like, okay, this is that moment in the film where we need tears, right? And the director's like, okay, this is that great moment where we need to feel the emotion inside of you. And ultimately, I would love to see the tears in your eyes, and I would love to see the teardrop fall. One of the most difficult things in film acting. It really is. Now, it's not that it's unattainable, though, or it's not that we have to resort to any sort of trick to get there, because there are in independent film, meaning lower budgeted film, and especially with directors that don't quite understand the process, or actors that are not there yet, they will use the drops in the eyes. And it's something that is used if they don't know how to get the actor to authentically shed a tear, or you don't know how to really get there. Then sure, the drops in the eyes or using a tear stick. There's a couple different methodologies for that, because then visually we'll see the eyes wet and we'll see a teardrop. And it might be good enough for whatever that movie is or whatever's happening. But ideally, we want authentic emotion. And so crying on cue comes down to really honing in on your imaginary circumstance work, really working on that. And then because when you get really proficient at your circumstance work and you start allowing yourself to feel emotion, you can allow it in at any time. It's a long journey. I mean, years of training to get there, because we're slowly reducing the self-consciousness. But it really is just, no, we now create a circumstance, and when we step into, deep loss or devastation, and we allow it to affect us, and then we will have an emotional result because of that, whatever that may be. Some actors are much better at this than others, and that's okay. Don't compare yourself to anyone else. We like to say comparison is the thief of joy. So do not compare yourself to anyone else. It's your own journey, and don't take away your joy by doing that. And know that along the journey, they'll have other tricks along the way, things that can help you get there. But ultimately, if you take a deeper class, it's part of what I teach in the studio. I teach over probably the first year. We go through a process where we learn how to step into this, and then I have a whole semester on, it's called Emotional Life, where this is all we do is work on emotion, 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 which is in relation to the imaginary circumstance. And we push the limits, we push the boundaries of what we're comfortable with emotionally until we just are open. And then beyond that, we continue the training. So the more you work on it, the better you'll become at having that command over the emotion, meaning when it's needed, precisely when it's needed, and then you'll be able to do that. But what I would say right now in the beginning is try an imaginary circumstance. The basic guidelines are it must be imaginary, right? It must be imaginary. We base it in something we know to be true right now. A person, place, thing, pet, whatever it is. It could be positive or negative. But we imagine something we either just found out or just happened. We imagine something that comes in, and from that imagination of what could happen, what could possibly happen that would affect me, we allow ourselves to try to just reflect on it and let it in and see what it does for you. Make sure it's imaginary. Do not work on anything. For example, what I tell my students is, if someone is actually sick right now in your life, don't use them. My God, leave them alone. Like we don't want to use something we're actually going through. But if you have a pet, let's say, so you have a dog or a cat or something and that you're very attached to, right? It's a loved pet. And you could say, well, what would it be like if I lost my dog? What would have happened if my dog ran away? How would I feel? What would happen if my dog got sick? How would I feel? And so it's those type of things. It's what if scenarios. And then on the other end of it, we have to step out. We have to remind ourselves what I just went through was imaginary and is not real. Okay, so these are things that you can work on and even try on your own. So, all right, so this question, I'm transitioning from a primarily theater background and I want to work in film. How have you found those two mediums? How do they differ when acting in an emotional or physical scene? So really it's the difference in this emotion between theater and film. So the first thing I'll say is from an emotional standpoint, meaning from learning how to accept in the emotion, feel it, and express it, they're exactly the same. There is no difference. The big difference between theater and film, because first of all, acting is acting is acting. There's truth in acting. That's really all there is, and it doesn't matter if we're in theater. It doesn't matter if we're in film. It doesn't matter if we're in television. It doesn't matter whatever we're doing, live performance like a theme park or something. It doesn't matter. There's truth in acting. And that's what we're after. But there's different optics, what we like to call, depending on whether we're watching a live theater show or whether we're watching film. And by optics, we mean what are we exactly looking at? So right now, as you're watching me, I'm in basically what's called a medium close-up shot. It's a medium to medium close in our shot, right? I'm right here, kind of center chest to right to the top of my head. It's what we would consider a medium close, meaning you're closer to me. It's as if you're only a few feet away from me looking at me. This is the beauty of camera. Right, but we also have close-up shots in film where I'm like closer to you. It's as if I'm really conveying something very important to you. It's between you and me, so it's called the close-up shot, right? And then we have shots where we're much further away. And so in film, we have the control of the optics of how far away from the action do we want the audience to feel. And because of that, how far away from the emotion? Well, in film acting, the closer the camera comes to me, the more important my emotional response is. And it's going to be shown right here in my eyes. Film, television, anything on camera, it's all about the eyes. So you'll see from a wide shot as the camera comes in, the focus is still right here on my eyes, right? It doesn't change, right? So as the camera moves in, the camera comes in on the eyes. So that's really important. And it's focused on the eyes because the eyes will allow the audience to connect with the internal life of the character, of the actor. The eyes that there's a saying, the eyes are the gateway to the soul or the window to the soul. Well, this is very true in our acting, where if we allow the the audience to connect in with us through our eyes authentically, then they can feel what's happening inside of us. Okay, so what this means is that in film, we have to really have this emotional life internally, because the camera's coming in closer. So I really need to be feeling these things on the inside, and it needs to be conveyed through the eyes. Versus in theater, we're on a stage. Now, depending on the size of the theater, but if it's a medium to a larger theater, I mean, even if you're seating over a couple hundred people in a theater, the actors are further away from you. Everything's in a wider shot, right? We're seeing the whole stage. We're seeing all of the actors. We as the audience can choose where to look at any moment. We're not really fully connecting into the internal life. So on stage, while we still have to have a full emotional response just like we do in film, we really want to have authentic response, it's going to be physically bigger. We need to convey it out. It's going to be expressed outwardly in a bigger way, not a false way, but in a bigger or heightened way. And the goal of that is so every seat in the theater, everyone who's sitting in the theater can fully understand and feel the impact of this emotional moment. We can't have a small, quiet, subtle moment. Because in film, if it's a small, quiet, subtle moment, the camera comes in so we can see it. So really, that's the biggest difference in between theater and film, and really all of it, not just with the emotional work, but everything we do between the two, is that the optics are different. So when I direct theater, I I actually direct theater with a film mindset. Okay, so for example, when I direct film, I'm thinking of the shot. Is it a medium shot? Is it a close shot? Like what am I looking? Where's the actor? Like, what is the audience seeing right now, and what do they have access to? That's what I do in film. That's what helps me choose the lens and the composition and all of that. But in theater, as I said, everything is wide. So what I do is I try to control the optics based in the positioning of the actors. Is the actor closer to the audience or further away from the audience? Is the actor turned toward the audience or kind of turned to the side? Like, how are they turned? What are they seeing? And are they moving or are they very still? And through the optics on stage, I can create different types of shots. I can give the audience a way to really come in and pull in or pull away. So these are the things that directors do in both mediums and allow us to do that. But what I would say, just if you're coming from theater, you're probably used to working in a bigger way, especially if you worked in bigger theaters. We're used to really expressing with our body, really pushing it out there. And in film, you're going to have to learn something called stillness. It's not about external anymore. It's about internal. It's about what's happening here. It's about what's happening inside, especially as the camera comes closer. So you have to work on really just feeling it, and that's it. And many theater actors that go to film many times feel like, man, what I'm doing is not enough right now. It doesn't feel enough. I don't feel like I'm doing anything. And much of the time, that's very true. And it's not that you're not doing anything, it's just that it's internal. The camera's catching it. We don't have to show it in a big way to the audience. I love both mediums. I direct both mediums and act in when I can in both mediums. And so I love them both, and they both have something so different to offer, both to the audience but also for the actor. And I highly recommend all actors, even if you want to be a film actor, you need to do theater acting. It teaches you so much. And it's a wonderful experience having that live energy and being live in that moment and knowing that there is no take two, there is no stopping and redoing. This is live moving forward, and there's an adrenaline to that. So I highly recommend doing that. And of course, film leaves a legacy. When you create a film, it's imprinted, and you have that for life. And there's something very special about that too. All right. So, what are some of the most difficult and complex emotions to show, and how do you tackle them? So, from a difficulty standpoint, believe it or not, positive emotions are more difficult than negative emotions. Meaning if when I'm teaching actors, when I teach them to go into a realm of devastation, it's vulnerable and it takes them time to lean into the vulnerability, but it's not so difficult for them to access the feeling. We understand what it feels like to be let down. We understand what it feels like to be alone. We understand what it feels like to lose something we love. I mean, these are very accessible things. So those aren't as difficult as it is to understand, what does it mean to get something you've always wanted? What does it mean for everything to be okay and to work out? Because when we go into positive emotions, we're not after simple things. It's not like, oh, well, I got a promotion at my job. It's not after like very simple things like that. It's profoundly meaningful. Profoundly meaningful. And really, that's what we're after as actors. We're never after the emotion itself. We're after the meaning that drives the emotion. We work from meaning. And we do that. We don't focus on emotion because the truth of life as human beings is that you have zero control over what you feel. You do not control in your life the feelings you have moment to moment. We only control the expression of them, meaning whether we allow the expression of them or whether we fight back the expression of them. You could be in the best mood, and then one little thing is said or something happens, or maybe you even read something, and it throws your mood completely off. You didn't intend for that to happen, but yet it still did because we don't have control over our feelings. If we did have control over our feelings, why wouldn't we just always feel good all the time? Wouldn't that be wonderful and magical if we could do that? But we don't. So as an actor, we have to work on the expression of them. And so it comes back to positive versus negative, meaning profoundly meaningful in a positive direction versus profoundly meaningful in a negative direction. And we as human beings struggle with going to profoundly meaningful in a positive way. We struggle with that. And it comes down to a little bit about how we're built and what makes us tick. As human beings, we have something called the logical mind, and I've talked about this in some of my other sessions. In fact, I have what's called, I think I have a session out there which is called the craft of acting, and I go through this step by step. But we have our logical mind. There's different aspects of our mind. There's our rational mind, there's our conscious mind, which is our awareness, and then there's the logical. The logical is a big part of who we are. We call it part of the duality of the human psyche, right? There's two major parts, components of ourself that make up who we are. The logical mind is one, and our emotional center is the other. Those two come together to make up how we feel and how we see the world each and every moment through the day. Well, our emotional center wants to feel. We feel our way through each and every moment. So we're feeling all the time, and it wants to feel. That's the part of us that is right here, right now, in this moment, feeling our way through life. It's the emotional center. We have no control over it. We simply feel. But then there's the logical mind. It's thought center. It's also called our fear center. The logical mind's job is to keep you safe. Survival is its number one function. Making sure that what you do keeps you safe so you continue to survive. That's exactly what that is. And you'll have it in your head. So if you've ever had something, let's say you've had something in your life you really wanted to do, but then your logical mind pulled you back from doing it. I hear that from students that tell me, when they finally take a class with me, they say, "Man, I've wanted to take your class for years, but I just never felt it was right. I always talked myself out of it." That's the logical mind seeing that there could be a danger in what you're about to do, so don't do it. It pulls you away from things because it's about survival. And so it's looking at worst case scenario for everything. Well, number one, because the logical mind works in worst case scenario, like what could possibly happen, right? Well, this horrible thing could happen, or you could die. It's always looking at that, and it's trying to steer you away from anything that could be dangerous in your life. Whether it's rational or irrational, because we have irrational fears, it's the same thing. And the logical mind will inject you with fear, which is a heightened state of awareness to remove yourself from the danger. It injects you with fear to try to make you avoid it. So we have this constantly going on. And it works in worst case scenario. It always trying to figure out what's the worst thing that could happen. But because of that, it allows us to access negative emotions because the logical mind's already thinking in that way. Well, sure, this could be the worst thing that could happen. Sure, that this could happen, right? It's already thinking in that way, trying to prepare you for these things. But extreme positive, it's not geared toward. Because the logical mind also works under, it needs information. It's binary in nature, meaning it only has two states, right? It's one or the other. And in this case, it's something is either safe or it's unsafe. And anything it doesn't have enough information on, it deems as unsafe. So this is where anything that is unknown to us feels unsafe. Anytime you're about to make a change in your life, it feels very unsafe and very vulnerable. Because that's a logical mind telling you, well, I don't have enough information about the change you're about to make. You could be in danger. And we feel that. We feel the fear of that. So now we're, again, coming back to, well, positive, extremely profound and positive. The mind works against that because when we think of, oh, wouldn't it be great if this happened? Because when we go in an extremely positive direction, we use the imaginary circumstance based in the life as we know, and we say, what amazing thing could happen to get there? And it's like, well, I could get the job I always wanted, right? As an actor, I could work in a project that I've always wanted. That would be amazing. Our mind has trouble grasping onto that. This whatever it is, this other wonderful thing. It's like our mind has trouble grasping onto that and starts making you think of, oh, what about this? What about that? And so it's hard to go to. So what I've found in going to profound positive emotions is not necessarily thinking about the self, because many actors will be like, what could happen to me that would be profoundly meaningful? It's very difficult to get there. But what could happen to somebody else that would be profoundly meaningful? And by this, I mean, we don't have to use ourself as our element in this. So instead of what could happen to me, maybe what could I do for somebody else that would make me just feel great? Students typically, younger students will talk about doing something for their parents or for their mom. It'd be like, my mom has sacrificed so much to give me or to give our family, right, to do whatever she needed to do. She sacrificed so much. It would be amazing if I could do this for her. If I can let her retire or send her on a trip or buy her a house or, to do something for her or, or for parents or for a loved one, doing something for someone else can tackle that profound meaning. We can accept the feeling of it easier than if it's something happening to ourselves. And it's a little bit easier to tackle in that. So for somebody else. And we have to figure out how to set up that circumstance, but because it allows ourselves to access a feeling called gratitude. And really, any sort of profound meaning in the positive direction is going to be in the realm of gratitude, feeling grateful for something that has occurred. And so that's what you have to think about. What could you be? I mean, what would be the biggest thing that could happen to you that would create profound gratitude? And then you work on that. And to me, I think they're wonderful to explore simply because gratitude is one of the most powerful feelings we have in our life. They're powerful and they're positive. And gratitude can actually change your life, meaning simply giving yourself permission every single day to feel grateful for something can change your life in a positive way. If you have a relationship that you're struggling with, uh, something that we do is you sit down and every single day you have a gratitude journal and write down just one thing every single day, but one thing you love about that person, one thing that you're grateful for that person. And it can shift. It takes a few weeks to start taking effect, but if you do it every single day, it will shift your energy from thoughts of negativity to thoughts of positivity and gratitude. And gratitude is one of the best feelings that we can have. So I highly recommend you do that just in your daily life. Um, Start just take a journal or just a any piece of paper, anything that you have. But every single day, write down one thing that you're grateful for. You can write down more if you want, but as far as just putting a guideline to it, at least one thing. And I'd be curious over a couple weeks how you feel and how it's changed your outlook on life and how you feel about it. So the next question is, how do I know if I'm overdoing it with the emotion or underdoing it? Okay, love this question because this is something that I get from my actors often, and it's uh, we feel and we're afraid that we're going to overact. Overacting is a crazy, crazy concept that actors are so concerned about and so fearful of. It's like, oh, I don't want to overact. I don't want to overdo it. It's a real fear that we have. So the biggest thing is that let me just say this: there's no such thing as overacting as long as you are in a truthful response to the world around you. If you're in relation to the world around you, meaning if we're thinking about a scene, right, a scene in a film that we're doing, and the scene is maybe it's an argument scene between two people, and it's like, well, I'm afraid of overacting in this argument scene, and so as a director, I'm like, you can't overdo it. I want you to go as far as you possibly can. Keep going. But you must work off your partner, meaning your response must be in response to what they just gave you. As long as you're in response, as long as you're really listening to what's being said to you and you're allowing it to personally affect you, and then you respond back, as long as you do that, there's no such thing as overacting. You can't take it too far. All right. So that's really where it comes down to. Now, we term overacting or overdoing it with the emotion. We term that when an actor is inward focused, meaning they're not in response to what's happening around them, they're inward focused. And uh, they're, we call it, they're just acting within their own head, right? You're just trying to show the emotion, but it's not in response to things that are happening around you. There's nothing that prompted it. So that's where melodrama comes in, or where it feels like it's overdone. So the key here is relationship, outward focus, and relationship. As long as you are authentically working off what is happening around you, you cannot go too far. There's no such thing as being too emotional. There really isn't. That's all just a fear that we have. So that's really what it is. But if you find yourself trying to show it and force it, well, then the whole thing, even the smallest amount, is too much because we lost the truth. And then here, I want to be a voiceover actor. Is emotion necessary for that medium? So I've many of my students, they study with me because they want to go into voiceover. And there was an idea for a time out there, and it's still out there, that to get involved in voiceover doesn't require actor training. Meaning that the concept is that, oh, I want to do voiceover, so it's really just learning how to use my voice. It's learning how to do funny voices or character voices or things like that. And that's not the case at all. So voiceover acting is One, first, learning how to act, learning the full breadth of acting. And secondly, then learning how to do it just with your voice. So, voiceover acting, especially as it progresses, it's progressed quite a bit over the years. And as it progresses, voiceover acting is becoming extremely difficult to get into. It's not impossible, but the difficulty is when I have actors come to me and they say, "How do I become a voiceover actor?" It's like, well, you need to learn acting. Like you need to learn the the full amount of everything you need to learn as an actor, and then we learn how to apply it to the voice. Just like when I teach acting, I teach a process of acting, and then second to that, I apply it to stage, I apply it to film, I apply it to commercials, or I apply it to voiceover. Those are technical layers that go on top. So, but even commercials. So, Janice, you're saying that you want to do commercials. Commercials are great. Commercials still demand truth. It's a heightened form of truth, but it's still truth. And so that's where we have to look into it. It's like, okay, there's just some technical layers that we apply on top of it, but the acting is paramount, meaning that we need to give as good of a performance in a voiceover, uh, whether it's animation, video game, whatever that is. We need to give as strong of a performance as if we were live on stage on Broadway, or if we're on a multi-million-dollar feature film. We need to give an extremely strong performance. It's why certain video games animations turn to uh, the A-list actors. They turn to celebrity type actors, not just because they're named, because these actors have been trained on how to do this. So we must be able to still get into this very truthful emotional response. I have a good friend of mine who's a voiceover director in LA. And when I talk to him, he tells me the same thing. It's like I'm looking for actors that understand voiceover, not voiceover actors, meaning not just actors that know it technically, but I want actors that can get into the character, that understand the deeper emotion. And he says, I will choose emotion over all of the other technical stuff every single time. So, and if you look at animation and gaming, they're highly emotional. Games are starting to become more narrative in nature. There's story involved, and the stories are very filmic. It's almost like you're playing a film, and especially if you're looking at like a Life is Strange or The Last of Us or so games like that that are very narrative. The acting must be strong. So when it comes to looking at that, it's like, okay, now they're really looking LA and the animation companies are looking for true actors that can now just do this only through their voice. So if you want to be a voiceover actor, you study acting. You have to study the full breadth of acting in order uh, to be able to do that. Uh, so really, that's where it comes down to. Now, see, Janice, I had one more question that you just put up. Um, Emotional imagination when doing commercials. It depends on the commercial. It really depends on what that is. Many commercials, it's sometimes commercials are just very simple. It's like, okay, you're outside having a barbecue, so just live that life. We don't need much imagination. We just work off of what's actually happening in our scenario. But sometimes commercials are more emotional. There's an emotional response to it depending on what we're selling. Uh, I remember there was a commercial years ago. It was a Super Bowl commercial for Budweiser, I believe, and it was a guy that had to say goodbye to his horse. Right, his horse was being taken off to be one of the Clydesdales for Budweiser, but it was a very emotional spot because in the spot it was this actor with a horse who had to have a deep bond. And so you have to really feel these things, feel that deep bond, and using imagination can help us get there. And then later on in the commercial, like 30 seconds to a minute later, they're very short, right? But later on, he's reunited and that reunion was very emotional. And so again, using the imaginary circumstance can help us get into that deeper truth. Most commercials don't go into deeper emotion, but sometimes they do. If nothing else, though, it must be truthful. Everything you say and everything that's happening around you, we want it to be authentic and truthful, meaning you really do it. You really say these things. You're really listening in response to the world around you. Yeah. So, wow, it's amazing how fast an hour goes. I love talking about all this stuff. It really is fun, but you can see how complicated some of this emotional journey is. And I say complicated. There's just a lot of different aspects to cover. It's all doable, but you just need to train little by little by little. So if you have any other questions, I have other sessions on here, sessions I've done in the past. Please, or on YouTube. And so if you go to our YouTube channel, which you just go to YouTube and it's Truthful Acting, and you can see all of our past sessions. And you can also, I have some other videos that talks about acting as well. And then you can see some samples. I put on some sample films that I've done with my students in class. You can see some of those as well. And I'm going to be continuing to put on more and more content in the future. So please head over to YouTube and like and subscribe, comment there if you have any questions, and I'll get back to you. I'll respond. Okay, and I would love to see you all again. You can reach out to us. You can call or text us at this number if you have any questions. That goes right to Samantha, who's been on the chat with you today, and she'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have, whether it's about our studio or program or just anything in general. And then also, or we have our email address, info@truthfulacting.com. And again, email us, and we'll do our best to get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. I love talking about this subject, and I loved having all of you here with me. So we'll be doing another one in a few weeks. I'll be announcing it shortly on the website, and I hope to see you all there as well. All right. Thank you, everyone.